I want to hear it too.
Yeah. Awesome.
If I would.
All right. Well, we're going to tell you. He's going to get up and give you a little rehash of his life up until this point. So my connection with Nate is I was his wrestling coach in high school. And he was told a lot of things, and he had some adversity to overcome. So what his speech is about how he overcame that, and hopefully to inspire you guys to do the same, okay? So this is Nate Borey. He is a teacher at San Diego State. He'll tell you a little bit more about that, but you guys have some things in common with Nate, and hopefully you pick up on some of those things as he talks today, okay? All right, thanks, Nate.
All right. So I'd like to tell all of you a story. This story is about a young man. This young man wasn't fast, he wasn't strong, he didn't really enjoy interacting with people. He pretty much preferred to be by himself, enjoy his time alone. He enjoyed the company of TV shows, movies, video games, stimulated forms of adventure, storytelling, and characters that he fell in love with. He preferred the company of just himself walking around the school playground, imagining himself in his favorite TV shows. He imagined himself as the most powerful character, the one that would come and save everyone else. He imagined himself as the hero. Now, as he got older, that was where the questions started to come in. What makes a hero? How does one become a hero? Well, that's what we're going to get into today. Hi, my name's Nate Borey, and if you haven't figured it out by now, that story is about me. When I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with high-functioning autism, or if you prefer an old term, Asperger's syndrome, or if you prefer the more common denomination, which is level 1 autism. And with that diagnosis came 3 challenges. The first was the inability to learn. The second, the inability to socialize. And the third, the inability to communicate. And with those challenges, my doctors, specialists, therapists, even my special education teachers, the people who were responsible for my care, my well-being, and who were responsible for making sure that I would have the opportunity to succeed in life, they all told me and my family that there was a high possibility that I might never graduate high school, that I might have to live with my family for the rest of my life. Now, for a kid who had no concept of social nuances, no concept of reality, who preferred to be in his own little world of fantasy, this idea of not being able to graduate high school was almost alien to me. I had no idea what anybody was talking about. I had no idea what anybody meant when they said this was going to happen to me. Instead, at the time, I retreated into my own mind where I preferred not to even interact with anybody. No one could get my attention. Nothing was getting through. So at that same time, that's where the responsibility to my parents was left. My parents had to take charge of my life. They had to take charge of my care. They had to take charge of making sure that when I got into special ed, my special education teachers knew exactly what they needed to do to make sure I'd be okay. They kept in constant contact with the teachers. They made sure they knew who I was. They made sure what I needed, what they thought I needed, but they didn't demand anything from the services. They didn't demand anything from special education. Rather, they interacted with them. They communicated with them. they thought it was better to allow my special education program to say, all right, you're willing to hear us. You're willing to understand what your son needs, but also you're willing to be open. And that was something that was really important. The rest of the time, I had no idea what was happening. And at the time when everyone was trying to bang at the door of my mind, of my consciousness, of trying to say, hey, Nate, come on, interact with people. Come on, Nate, get out of here. Get out of there. Come on, open up. Nothing was happening. No one could get my attention. Nothing was getting through. And that was when my dad, the man who has basically become my rock, my lightning rod, the man who has basically become my best friend, chose a different path forward. He chose instead to slipstream. See, when I was in my mind, I was sitting in front of a TV screen, constantly absorbing and retreating, watching TV, doing absolutely nothing. When my dad sat down next to me on the couch, he didn't try to get me away from it. He didn't try to get me away from the TV. Instead, he asked me questions. He asked me, Nate, who is this? Or, Nate, what's happening here? Or, Nate, can you tell me what's going on right here? And instead of responding with nonsense or silence, I responded in complete sentences. I said, Dad, this is what's happening here. Or, Dad, this is who this is. Or, Dad, this is what is happening right now. The walls started to crumble. He had somehow reached into the darkness and pulled me out. See, when I was sitting down in front of that TV screen, I wasn't just retreating. I was consuming. I was learning. I had grown a connection with the characters and stories and ideas that I had been watching. They began to become my teachers, my mentors, and my friends. They taught me advanced concepts, complex language, advanced rhetoric. I would take words and phrases that I heard on those TV shows, and I would repeat them in the real world. To anybody else who were not my friends or my family, they would think of them as random blurts, total nonsense. But to me and my family, I was talking. Not very well, but it was a start. After that, I successfully got into high school. I had made it to the point where I wasn't sure what to do after that. So I wanted to make the most out of my high school career. So I joined a team. I could have chosen anything. I could have chosen the Glee Club, the Drama Club. I could have chosen the Chess Club, for crying out loud. I could have chosen anything that would have stimulated the mind, allowed me to communicate better, and just got my brain cells thing going. Instead, I chose wrestling. I chose the hardest sport imaginable. And Craig will tell you that the first day that we met, he tried touching me on my shoulder. And when he did, I recoiled. That was when he realized I could not be touched. And the irony of wrestling is that it is literally touching. So how in the world was I going to wrestle when I couldn't be touched? Well, that was when Craig got me introduced to Jason. He was our heavyweight wrestling coach. And whether it was because I was overweight, he was heavyweight, and he just knew how to communicate with me, or maybe I just felt some kind of unknown connection to him that I just felt like it was okay to interact with him more. Craig set me up with him. He became my one and only coach. Oh boy. And if there was one thing I remembered from wrestling, it was being dragged along the wrestling mat during practice, being pushed like a wheelbarrow with Jason's hands on my shoulders, and I felt like I was going to topple over every single time. I kid you not. That was what it felt like. And I can already imagine it. I can already see it happening right now in my face. It was amazing. And at the start of my time in wrestling, I thought I was never going to be able to continue. I thought every single day I went to practice, I thought, nope, I'm going to quit. This is too much. I'm getting winded. I'm getting exhausted. I'm sweating bullets. It's too much. But when it got to the end of the semester, when it got to the end of the season, I realized I had to take a step forward. See, during the initial season, I preferred to sit on the bleachers during tournaments. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this because it's probably before your time. But if anybody remembers the original Apple iPod, they had those tiny 3x3 screens that you could just stick your head into, and it's just like, ooh, it's pretty. Well, that's what I did every single tournament. I retreated into my comfort zone, and I just did not want to wrestle. I just did not want to interact with any of that. Pissed Craig off something serious. Pissed my team off something serious. But after that, I started taking it seriously, and over the summer, during the off-season tournaments, I started to win. I started to get excited. I started thinking, wow, I could do this. And then when I was 16, my sophomore year had just started. The winter season was about to start. I was excited. I went into my first match that season. I was aggressive. I was mean, and I won. But after that was when things started to go downhill. I had an accident. I broke the tip off of my right femur. It was serious enough that I had to get surgery. They had to pin the bone back together. And after weeks of recovery, I was left with a choice. I could either quit the team, take care of my leg, heal, and start to focus on my life. Or I could go back to wrestling, and I could potentially put my knee in jeopardy again. Ultimately, it was a choice that was left to me and my family, and we decided that it was better to save my knee. So that's what I did. I focused on my education. I focused on making sure that going forward, I would take better care of myself. But I never lost any of the lessons that wrestling had taught me. I took the words, champs are made, not born, and I applied it to every aspect of my life. I also took the words, pain is just weakness leaving your body, and applied it to everything I did. Now, I had remembered it as pain is fear leaving your body, but maybe that was my weakness. Maybe the fear was actually my weakness that was constantly leaving me whenever I went into practice. And the fear was what was stopping me from being able to succeed. So, I graduated high school. I went on. I got my associate's degree. I got my bachelor's degree. And I got my master's degree. Those were some of the most difficult times of my life. Times where I thought I was going to fail. Times I thought I was going to crash and burn and never be able to recover from it. Every single mistake I made, I thought that was it. I thought that was the end. But somehow, through hard work, determination, and the ability to be able to say, push forward, I was able to do it. Now, I'm teaching public speaking at San Diego State University. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? I certainly didn't. But that's the point. That is what it means to be a hero. The ability to be able to push forward and the ability to say, you will be able to accomplish something. You will be able to succeed. And what makes a hero is the recognition that you can have all the support you could ever want in your life. Friends, family, a coach, support system like this. But eventually, you're going to have to be able to take charge of your own life. You're going to have to be able to say to yourself, you can do this. You're going to have to commit. You're going to have to work hard. And you're going to have to be able to say to yourself, I am the hero of my own story. So let me ask you, how are you the hero of your own story? Thank you.